Hi, I'm Lorraine. I wasn't invited to my own brother's wedding. No one told me why until I uncovered the truth. My parents forged my signature and gave away everything that was mine. But the moment I stood up to speak, my brother knelt down. What would you do if the people who raised you rewrote your entire life? Before we dive in, what time is it where you are? And have you ever felt erased by your own family? Drop a comment below. We're listening. Friday nights usually meant a good book, a glass of red, and the silence I'd long since stopped resenting. But that evening, the silence cut different. I had just finished grading essays and was thumbing through Instagram, mindlessly flipping past sunset photos and dog reels when a caption grabbed me by the throat. "Can't wait for the big day, Declan and Ainsley, Charleston spring wedding." The photo showed Ainsley, my brother's fiancé, beaming beneath Spanish moss at Boone Hall. Declan stood behind her, holding up a tiny chalkboard that read, "1 month to go." My thumb froze mid-scroll. I blinked. Then I blinked again. There had been no phone call, no text, no invitation buried under junk mail or stuck behind the fridge. Just this post, this accidental slap, from a woman who called me her future sister. My stomach twisted, but I kept scrolling. There it was again, a reel from their engagement shoot. Guests in the comments, "So excited for the big day. We booked our flights already. You two are perfect together." All these names I recognized, family, friends, co-workers of Declan's who once needed my help rewriting resumes. I was not just missing from the post, I was missing from the moment. I shut the app, stared at the darkened screen, and then I called my mother. She picked up on the second ring, chirpy like she'd been waiting for me. Well, look who remembered to call her mama. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Quick question. Is Declan getting married next month?" There was a pause. Just long enough. Then she let out a light laugh. "Oh, honey, don't take it that way. We didn't want to bother you with all the logistics. You've always got your head in those books and lesson plans. We figured, why stress you out?" Stress me out? I sat up straighter. "So, I'm not invited?" "Now don't say it like that," she snapped, the warmth gone in an instant. "It's a small ceremony. Ainsley wanted something. Curated, clean, just family." "I am family," I said. There was silence, and then she sighed, tired, like I was a burden. "You know what I mean. Declan's the one getting married. The focus should be on him." I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. Mom launched into praise for Ainsley's vision, how everything had to be white, soft-toned, perfect. No disruptions. "She has such taste, you know, like a real Martha Stewart type. It's just better this way." "Better for who?" I hung up politely, said I understood, thanked her for being honest. But the minute we disconnected, I slammed my laptop shut and sat in the dark. The next 2 days, I said nothing to anyone. I buried myself in work, kept my face neutral on Zoom lectures, and tried not to think about how 34 years of birthdays, holiday drives, and sibling loyalty could be erased by a Pinterest board and a seating chart. Sunday morning, I stopped by Harkin's Coffee downtown to grab my usual. I hadn't expected to run into Ainsley. She was at the cream counter, stirring oat milk into something iced and matcha-colored. Her eyes met mine, wide. Then came that tight-lipped smile women use when they know they've been caught but aren't sure what for yet. "Lorraine, wow, hey, I didn't know you came here," she said too brightly. "I live 3 blocks over," I replied. "Oh, right, of course, haha, small world." She adjusted the gold bracelet on her wrist, one I knew Declan had given her. It read DNA. I watched her fumble with the lid of her cup. "So, big month coming up," I said casually, grabbing a wooden stir stick even though I didn't need one. Ainsley froze, just for a second. "Oh, yeah, we're excited." I hadn't heard anything official, I added, keeping my tone even. She blinked, smile faltering. I thought, wait, Declan said your parents decided, it's kind of just immediate family, you know? My heart didn't break. It didn't even tremble. It hardened. "That makes sense," I said, forcing a small smile. "Good to know where I stand." Ainsley mumbled something about the line behind us and fled the counter. That night, I stayed up past midnight, grading papers with half my brain, while the other half repeated her words like a looped voicemail. Immediate family. Your parents decided. Decided what? That I didn't matter? The next morning, I got a forwarded message from my old college roommate, Lacey. Didn't know you were in the wedding party, her text read, followed by a screenshot. It was a group text. Hey, wedding squad, final fittings next Saturday. Can't wait to celebrate with all of you. Declan and Ainsley forever. Every cousin, every friend. Ainsley's former roommate from grad school. Even their neighbor's teenage daughter, who apparently was helping with the flower arch. Everyone was on that thread, except me. Lacey had sent it to me out of concern. Not malice. Her WTF had come with heart emojis. But I stared at the names and felt something icy crawl into my chest. They didn't forget me. They deleted me. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay there in the dark with the ceiling fan clicking overhead, its rhythm syncing with the ugly truth rolling around in my mind. If I didn't matter enough to be included in the most public moment of my brother's life, maybe it was time I stopped playing by the invisible rules this family lived by. The next morning, I opened the closet in my hallway, the one I hadn't touched in years. Inside sat a faded cardboard box with my name in black Sharpie, Lorraine, personal. It was wedged behind old winter coats and an unopened slow cooker from a work gift exchange. I pulled it out, coughing as a layer of dust greeted me. I hadn't planned on going through my past. I'd only been looking for a few childhood photos, maybe something to print and frame as a symbolic olive branch, foolish as that sounds now. But when I lifted the top and saw the manila folder marked Family Deeds and Titles, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Inside, I found the original title to the small plot of land our family owned just outside Johns Island. My parents used to joke that it would be ours one day, split evenly between me and Declan. I remembered walking that land as a teenager, thinking I'd one day build a little writing retreat out there, a place just mine. But the second page in the folder made my throat clench. There was a newer copy, official, notarized, and filed. Same document, different signature page. My name was gone, erased cleanly. Declan's remained. At first I thought maybe it was a clerical mistake, a draft. But then I saw it. At the bottom, right where my name used to be, my signature. Sort of. It looked like mine. The swoop of the L, the way I always cross my R with a tiny hook. But it wasn't quite right. It was too neat, too copied. I stared at it for a long moment, heart thudding. Then the memory hit. 2 years ago. My mother had called me while I was between semesters. She said she needed a quick signature on some tax stuff, something about filing jointly for the land to reduce some estate planning burdens. I was packing for a conference in Atlanta and running late. When I showed up at the house, she greeted me with a mug of tea and a stack of papers. "Just sign here, baby. It's nothing big. You trust your mother, don't you?" Of course I signed. I didn't read a single line. I had to catch a lift in 20 minutes. I even joked, "Watch this be the thing where you all trick me out of the will." And we both laughed. But it wasn't a joke. I sat down at my kitchen table, the folder in front of me like a corpse I didn't know what to do with. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't call them. I opened my laptop. I created a spreadsheet. Evidence property fraud vertical bar timeline. I listed the date of that quick signature visit, then I pulled old emails confirming my trip. Calendar invites. The message from mom with the subject line, "Need your signature for taxes." I checked the file metadata on the scanned documents. The file had been altered 4 days after I signed it. This wasn't an oversight. This was planned. I pulled a drawer open and found the notebook I kept for lecture notes and admin reminders. In the back, I scribbled out a to-do list. Call county clerk, request title chain, confirm notarization signature, check email headers, dates, digital stamps, locate property appraisals, post-transfer contact family lawyer anonymously. My fingers shook, but not from fear, from fury. I wasn't just excluded, I was defrauded, and the worst part? They knew I'd be too gracious to question it. That's what I'd always been, the good daughter, the one who didn't ask for anything, and now I had nothing to lose. Later that evening, after hours of searching, I found a voicemail from my father buried in my call log. It had come 6 months after that signature meeting. At the time, I'd been too busy to really think about it. It had felt harmless then, loving even. "Hey, sweetheart," his voice crackled through the speaker. "Just finishing up some things with Declan. We're putting pieces in place for his future, you know? Gotta set up his legacy now while it's all clean and simple. Anyway, we'll talk soon." His future. Clean and simple. I paused the message and let the silence sit in my apartment. Now I understood. They never thought I'd check. Never imagined I'd dig. They figured I was too buried in my students' essays and faculty meetings to notice they'd drawn a line through me on the family blueprint. I stared at my own signature on the title. My fake signature. "You thought I wouldn't check," I whispered. But now, I was checking everything. The sky outside had shifted from gray to gold by the time I closed my laptop. I hadn't realized how long I'd been digging. Hours combing through scanned files, calendar reminders, voice messages, trying to trace the moment I disappeared from my own family's narrative. I thought I'd reached the edge of what they were capable of. But then, just after I poured a second cup of coffee, my phone buzzed with a message from Aunt Marla. It read, "Hey sweetie, just checking in. I thought you said you didn't want the land." My stomach dropped, sloshing my coffee as I set the mug down. "What?" I called her immediately. Marla answered on speaker, her voice casual as if we were discussing recipes. "Oh, sweetheart, your mother told us you decided it was too much responsibility. Said you wanted to focus on your work and not get tangled up in family legal stuff. That you were never really interested." I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles whitened. "She said that?" "She made it sound like you were relieved. That you thought splitting things would cause drama. Honestly, I admired how grown up it sounded. Letting go of all that mess." "Letting go?" She chuckled lightly. "She even said you told her something like, 'I'm not attached to dirt.'" I didn't say anything for a moment. There was nothing to say that wouldn't come out as a scream. "Marla," I said finally, "I never said any of that. I didn't give anything up." There was a pause. "Oh. Well, I'm sure your mother meant well. Maybe there was a misunderstanding." No, there wasn't. There was a rewrite. They weren't just taking from me, they were reframing me, painting me as the daughter who preferred her lectures over legacy, the sister who let go so everyone else could move forward. After I hung up, I sat in silence until the sun had dipped below the horizon. Then I scrolled through my old messages and landed on one thread that used to bring me comfort. My cousin Lena. We used to text daily. We'd share book recommendations, vent about our families, and joke about the way Southern holidays could feel like hostage situations. But I hadn't heard from her since that wedding announcement post. I typed, "Hey, stranger, haven't heard from you. Everything okay?" The text was marked read, but she didn't respond. The next afternoon, her message arrived. "Hey, I've been meaning to reach out. My parents don't want me getting involved in any family stuff right now. I hope you understand." Understand? I understood more than she realized. They had gotten to her too, whispered stories behind my back, created a version of me that was selfish, ungrateful, bitter. And now, even the people who once loved me were keeping their distance, not because they hated me, but because they thought I'd chosen to walk away. I hadn't walked. I'd been pushed. That night, I lit a candle and opened a bottle of Cabernet. I needed something to soften the blow before I opened the drawer in my hallway, the one where I kept letters, cards, and paperwork I hadn't had the heart to toss. Among old birthday cards and expired insurance forms, I found the envelope. Cream-colored, crisp, my mother's handwriting on the front. I opened it with trembling fingers. It was a letter addressed to the family attorney. A draft, maybe, never mailed, dated about 18 months ago. Regarding our daughter Lorraine, we believe it is in the family's best interest to simplify legal ownership, to avoid future conflicts. Given her disinterest in the property and her emotional temperament, we recommend transferring the title to Declan solely. My emotional temperament? I laughed. Out loud. A bitter, dry sound that startled even me. They didn't just want me gone, they wanted to make sure if I ever came back, no one would believe I'd been there to begin with. I thought of Christmas 3 years ago, when I brought a handmade photo album for Mom, and she left it in the guest room by accident. Or the family Zoom call during the pandemic, when no one noticed I'd been on mute for half the conversation. I wasn't the black sheep. I was the ghost child. the one who didn't make waves, so they drowned me in silence. In the quiet of my apartment, I whispered to no one. They didn't protect me. They branded me as someone who didn't need protecting. That was the role they cast me in, the accommodating one, the dependable one, the one they could edit out of the family without anyone blinking. But they forgot one thing. I'd learned how to read between the lines, and I was rewriting the ending. They hadn't forgotten me by accident. They designed it, like a seating chart without enough chairs. And for the first time in years, I stopped pretending it was just oversight. I got in my car and drove to the rehearsal dinner. I arrived 10 minutes before sunset. The venue was some upscale plantation-style manor just outside Charleston, the kind of place where the gravel driveway crunches like secrets under your feet. I wore a navy blue dress and flats. No jewelry, no fanfare. I wasn't there to reclaim a crown. I just wanted to be present. At the welcome table, a girl barely out of college glanced up from her clipboard. "Name?" she asked without looking. "Lorraine. Lorraine Glass." She scanned the list, squinting. Not seeing you under the main party." I waited. She flipped a few pages, then looked up awkwardly. I think there's a spot in the back, near the kitchen, if that's okay?" I nodded, smiling the kind of smile women wear when they've been told, politely, they don't belong. "That's just fine," I said. "I won't be any trouble." The table was tucked beside the service entrance, half shielded by a floral arch and a portable fan. I sat beside an elderly cousin I hadn't seen in years, and a young man from Ainsley's side who only talked about real estate in Atlanta. I watched my parents from afar. My mother had on her best pearls. My father laughed too loud at a joke from Ainsley's father. They hadn't even noticed I was there. Ainsley passed by my table once, her perfume arriving before she did. She didn't say a word, didn't even glance my way. I shouldn't have been surprised. A week earlier, I'd mailed them a wedding gift. Something personal, thoughtful. A leather-bound photo album I'd spent hours assembling, filled with memories of me and Declan growing up, fishing trips, Christmas mornings, our first time at the beach. I'd even written captions under each photo in my neatest handwriting. 3 days later, it came back. Return to sender. No recipient by that name found at this address. At first, I thought it was a delivery error. I called the courier. "Nope," the voice on the other end confirmed. That package was refused by the recipient, marked undeliverable. I remember standing in my apartment, holding that sealed box like it was a bomb. No one in that house had wanted to open anything with my name on it. Back at the dinner, someone clinked a glass. Ainsley's maid of honor stood to make a speech. Declan sat beside her, glowing with the ease of someone who'd never had to wonder whether he belonged. My mother leaned in close to whisper something to him. He smiled, shook his head, and kissed her cheek. It was like watching a stage play where my character had been cut in the final draft, but no one told me, so I showed up in costume anyway. A woman at a nearby table nudged her husband and asked, "Isn't that the professor daughter?" He shrugged. "Think so. She lives out of state, right? Doesn't really come around." "She's always been intense," the woman replied, just loud enough. I sat perfectly still, chewing slowly on a dinner roll that tasted like ash. I didn't cry, not in front of them. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of thinking their edits worked. After the last toast, I walked slowly toward the guest book. It was placed on a marble pedestal near the entrance, flanked by candles and surrounded by framed engagement photos of Declan and Ainsley. Pages filled with wishes, blessings, memories. Each section was labeled by family branch. Coleman side, Wilmot guests, friends of bride, and extended family. I flipped through, scanning the signatures. Lena had signed. So had Aunt Marla. Even our second cousin Vincent, who lived in Seattle and hadn't shown up since Grandma's funeral. But my name, my place, not there. I stood still for a long moment, pen hovering above the page. Then I signed anyway. Not in the extended family section, not as guest. I flipped to the last page and wrote in large cursive strokes across the bottom margin, "Lorraine Glass, sister of the groom, family." No one saw me, no one needed to, but I had written it, and it would stay. I signed my name, not for them, but so I wouldn't forget who I was. And now, hours later, I sat at the far end of the reception hall, hands folded neatly in my lap as if silence would somehow shield me from what was coming. The clinking of glasses signaled a transition. Dinner plates were being cleared. Waitstaff moved like ghosts in pressed black uniforms. Then I heard it, my father's voice, bright and polished as he stepped forward with a microphone in hand. "Good evening, everyone." The chatter quieted immediately. I kept my eyes down, tracing the edge of my napkin as if it might unravel the ache sitting in my chest. Ronald Coleman had always been a man of few but purposeful words. Former bank vice president, church deacon, man of image, reputation. He didn't ramble, he aimed. "We are beyond grateful you're here tonight to celebrate this beautiful beginning," he began. "Declan and Ainsley are everything we've hoped for. Independent, ambitious, faithful." I could feel the nods, the affirming murmurs ripple through the crowd like a tide. We've waited a long time for this moment, for the right time, the right match, the right step forward, and now, with everything in place, our family is finally whole. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. I stared straight ahead at the centerpieces, those overpriced ivory peonies wilting under the weight of his words. Our family is finally whole. Not missing, not wounded, not divided. Whole. No mention of me, not as a daughter, not as a sister, not even as someone sitting 3 tables away with a name tag clipped to her clutch. Someone gasped, quiet, involuntary. "She wasn't even mentioned," an aunt whispered to her husband. I closed my eyes. 3, 2, 1. It wasn't the erasure that hurt most. It was that they didn't think I'd react. They expected compliance, always had. But they'd forgotten about the day I warned them. 2 weeks before the wedding, I'd shown up at my parents' doorstep without calling. My mother opened the door with a startled smile, eyebrows arching like punctuation marks. "Well, this is a surprise." "We need to talk," I said. She led me to the kitchen like she was hosting a book club, made me tea I didn't ask for, pulled out shortbread cookies as if small talk would fix decades. "I know about the deed," I said calmly, "and about what you told Marla, about what you've told Lena." She didn't flinch. "You've rewritten everything I ever was in this family," I continued. "I need you to stop." Elaine stirred her tea, unbothered. "Sweetheart, this is not a drama. It's just life. Declan needed clarity. You always said you didn't want to be tied down." "I never said that," I replied. "You did." She tilted her head. "Well, maybe I misunderstood. But now isn't the time to get emotional, especially not with the wedding coming." "This isn't emotional. This is a warning." She smirked like I was reciting a poem I'd written as a teenager. "If this continues," I said evenly, "I will speak." Her answer? A long sip of tea. Then, with a maternal sweetness that curdled in my stomach, she said, "Don't make a scene, Lorraine. That's not who you are." She was right, in part. That wasn't who I had been. But I was someone different now. Someone they'd pushed too far. Back in the reception hall, I sat motionless as my father wrapped up his speech with a joke about grandchildren and passing down life lessons. Everyone laughed, except me. I stared at my wine glass, my fingers wrapped tightly around the stem, pressing hard enough to feel the tension buzz under my skin. Around the room, I felt it, the sideways glances, the subtle head tilts. People weren't looking at the bride and groom anymore. They were looking at me, the sister who'd vanished from the family slideshow, the daughter who wasn't referenced in a single anecdote, the woman whose name, if said out loud, might rupture the script they'd worked so hard to preserve. I stood up slowly, smoothed the front of my dress, and walked to the side of the stage where the MC stood reviewing the schedule. He looked surprised. "Oh, do you need something?" I leaned in, lowered my voice so only he could hear. "Would you mind if I said a few words?" He blinked, uncertain. "Is that cleared with the couple?" "It won't take long," I said. "I promise." A pause. Then, maybe sensing something bigger than etiquette at play, he gave me the mic. The chatter faded. Forks dropped. Even the band stopped mid-adjustment. I stepped to the front, not out of vengeance, out of clarity. The mic was heavier than I expected. Or maybe it was the silence pressing in from every direction. For a second, I thought I might freeze, but the words came. They had been waiting long enough. "I'm Lorraine," I said, voice clear, not trembling. I wasn't invited, but I came anyway. Murmurs flared like lit matches across the room. Some were confused, others tense. I saw Declan stiffen, his hand still resting on Ainsley's waist. My mother's wine glass hovered midair, forgotten. Dad didn't even look at me. His gaze locked on the floor, jaw tight. I came, I repeated, because I refuse to let you all keep telling a version of this family that edits me out. Someone chuckled, awkwardly. Another guest whispered, "What's happening?" But I wasn't looking at them. My eyes stayed on the head table. I watched the way my brother blinked, slow and deliberate. The way Ainsley leaned toward him, probably whispering, "Do something." Instead, I did. "I'm not here to toast the bride and groom," I continued. "I'm here because I have something that belongs to me, and I'm not going to lose it quietly." I opened my clutch slowly, deliberately. From inside, I pulled out 2 documents, folded neatly. "This," I held up the first sheet, my voice level, "is a copy of the original deed to the land my parents promised would go to both me and my brother." I turned slightly, making sure the front rows could see. "This," I lifted the second page, "is the updated version, filed without my knowledge, my name removed, a forged signature in its place." Gasps, audible, uncontained. I turned to face my parents now. "2 years ago," I said, "you asked me to sign what you said was a minor tax document. You said I could trust you. I did, and you used it to cut me out of what was mine." Someone from the bride's family whispered, "Is this legal?" The DJ turned down the background music without being asked. I walked to the edge of the dance floor and laid both copies on a table, side by side, for everyone to see. "I have proof, signatures, timestamps, email threads." My voice cracked slightly, but it wasn't weakness. It was fury pushing through the cracks. "You didn't just forge my name, you forged my place in this family, and I'm done pretending not to notice." I scanned the room. The stunned faces, the dropped jaws. Some people looked away uncomfortable. Others stared like they were seeing me for the first time, and still, no one from the head table moved. I could have stopped there. But then I remembered what happened 15 minutes before I took the mic. One of the catering staff, a young man carrying a tray of champagne flutes, had tapped my shoulder. "Hey, are you with the catering team?" he asked, eyeing my plain dress. He wasn't trying to insult me. He just assumed. Because why else would I be standing alone in the shadows, ignored? I smiled at him, politely, but something inside me hardened like cooling steel. "Not tonight," I whispered. I came back to the present and looked right at my father. "You said earlier this family is finally whole." I nodded. But a family built on silence isn't whole. It's hollow. My mom still hadn't blinked. She sat perfectly still, lips slightly parted as if trying to calculate her next sentence before I gave her space to speak. I didn't give it to her. "I'm not ruining a wedding," I said, stepping back. "I'm revealing what's already rotten." The silence cracked. Someone dropped a fork. A voice said, "Oh my God." And then, from somewhere in the back, a single clap. It echoed like a gunshot, then another and another. A slow, uneven rhythm of response. Some clapped out of discomfort. Some out of stunned respect. Others remained frozen. I met my brother's eyes. He didn't move, didn't defend, didn't even look ashamed. Just still. I handed the mic back to the MC without a word. My hands were steady. As I walked back toward my table, toward the exit, I felt a shift in the room. The script had been broken, and I was no longer playing the part they wrote for me. I didn't move, I didn't have to. The silence that followed my last words did everything I couldn't. It expanded, thick and slow like molasses, coating every guest, every glass of wine, every crumb of the wedding cake that no one had touched. I could feel my heart pounding, not out of fear, but clarity. The kind that comes only after you've walked through fire and realized it didn't burn you. It carved you into something sharper. Then came my mother's voice, cold, polished, fragile porcelain trying not to crack. "That's not what happened," she said, rising slowly from her seat. "She's confused, emotional. She's exaggerating." She scanned the guests, hunting for nods of support, any lifeline to credibility. I looked straight at her. "Would you like me to read the email your husband accidentally sent me?" Her lips parted, just a flicker, but she didn't answer. I didn't wait. I reached into my clutch again. There was no drama this time, no flourish, just quiet, brutal precision as I unfolded the printout and began to read aloud. To Ronald and Declan, re-asset transition. My voice didn't tremble. Let's push through the asset transfer now while Lorraine's still unaware. It's best she's left out of this for everyone's sake. The room collectively inhaled, and for a second it was like the air had been sucked out. Chairs creaked. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God," I continued. "It was CC'd to me, by accident, just one click. That's all it took to shatter the story you tried to sell." I looked up. My father had gone pale. Not red, not furious, just drained of color like the blood had abandoned him. Elaine sat back down slowly, her spine stiff but her eyes darting. Ainsley's lips curled into something like pity, or panic. And Declan? He stood. His hands were at his sides, clenched, like he couldn't decide whether to fight or flee. I watched his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed hard. He didn't look at our parents. He looked at me. "I didn't know," he said, voice rough. "Lorraine, I swear I didn't know any of this." He stepped forward, one foot onto the dance floor, then the other. People moved out of his way like parting waves. The crowd murmured again, this time unsure of what they were witnessing. And then he knelt. Right there, in front of me, on the very floor where our father had toasted the wholeness of the family just an hour earlier. He knelt, not to propose, not to beg, but to surrender something neither of us could name. "If what you said is true," his voice cracked, "then none of this means anything to me. The house, the land, this damn wedding." I didn't speak. I couldn't. The air was vibrating around me, and for once I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was hollow, but it wasn't a loss. It was the clearing before something new could grow. Declan looked up, eyes shining, not with tears, but with disbelief. "I thought they were just helping me. I didn't know it was at your expense." Behind him, I saw our mother slowly rise again. Her face, flushed, desperate, twitched in a way I hadn't seen before. Not calculated, not graceful, just cornered. "This is a family matter," she said sharply. "This isn't the place." "The place?" I repeated softly. "Where is the place? Because it wasn't your house, not at the last holiday. Not when you told the rest of the family I gave up my share. Not when you lied in legal documents. So please, enlighten me. Where is the place?" Elaine's mouth moved, but no words came. For the first time, her armor cracked, and it wasn't anger she showed. It was fear. The officiant stepped aside slowly, retreating from the altar like a stagehand recognizing the scene no longer belonged to him. Guests were watching me now with something new in their eyes. Not just curiosity, not scandal hunger, something like belief, a quiet understanding. Ainsley gripped the back of her chair so tightly her knuckles whitened. Her perfect wedding makeup couldn't conceal the storm brewing in her glare, and still, Declan knelt. "I don't know how to fix it," he said, "but I want to start by acknowledging it happened, that you were wronged, that you matter." For once, I believed him. It didn't erase the past. It didn't unsign the paper, but it cracked something open, and that was enough. I extended my hand, not to help him up, just to let him know I saw him, as a person, as my brother, not as a victim, not as a savior, just human. He took it. Gasps stirred again. I didn't care. I looked at my mother. "You taught me that silence keeps peace, but it only keeps secrets." Her eyes widened, bracing for more. "I'm not finished," I added, voice like glass, "but I'm not hiding anymore either." The crowd began to murmur. Questions hung in the air. Aunt Marla dabbed her eyes. The best man stared into his drink. And somewhere behind me, someone said, "She's rewriting the script." Maybe I was, but I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for the girl they tried to write out of her own story, and for the woman she became when she picked up the pen. The sound that came next wasn't applause. It was chairs scraping backward, feet shifting, forks quietly clinking against plates that had suddenly lost their purpose. I stood there, still holding the mic, but I wasn't the one moving the room now. The weight of what had been said, what had finally been said, was doing that. Guests started checking their phones. Some pretended to take calls. Others whispered to spouses, exchanged glances, then began to excuse themselves with polite half-smiles that didn't reach their eyes. The illusion had cracked, and no one wanted to be caught standing on a floor made of lies. Ainsley's family had clustered near the bar like they'd found higher ground. Her mother's tight bun looked even tighter now as she gave my mother a glare that could burn through drywall. "She let this happen?" someone whispered behind me. "No, she caused it," someone else murmured. I turned my head slightly and caught just enough of their faces to see their discomfort wasn't just pity, it was embarrassment. The kind that comes from realizing you clapped for something rotten and only just realized it stank. Then, from across the room, I heard it. "Can't believe they did that to their own daughter." I didn't know who said it, but I felt it settle over the room like a verdict. One more honest than anything my family had offered me in years. Elaine, my mother, rose from her table, her posture perfect, but her eyes flickering with panic. "I'd like to say something," she called out, walking toward the mic. Her heels clicked like accusations on the wood floor. "I think it's important that everyone understands," she continued, gripping the microphone as if it could save her. "This isn't what it looks like. Lorraine is twisting everything." She looked at me like I should shrink, like I should do what I'd always done, retreat, make space, avoid the scene. But I stepped forward. "Twisting?" I repeated calmly. "You told everyone I gave it up, that I didn't want the land, that I was too focused on my career, too removed to care. But the truth is, you took it, you lied, and you had a lawyer help you hide it." A silence deeper than before fell over the room. Elaine blinked hard, like she couldn't comprehend I was still speaking, still standing. A voice from the crowd, Aunt Cheryl, I think, called out, "Is that really her signature on the papers?" I didn't flinch. "Compare it." I didn't need to say more. Elaine's face stiffened. Her hand gripped the mic like a drowning woman might cling to driftwood. But there was nothing left to float her. Ronald finally moved. He approached her, touched her arm, and whispered something I couldn't hear. But I saw the defeat in her eyes the moment he said it. They walked out together. Not with grace, not with dignity, just silence. The kind you get when people know they've been exposed. As they disappeared through the side exit, more guests followed. Not in a rush, not dramatic, but like leaving early was a kindness, a way to cleanse themselves of the association. Declan stayed beside me. He hadn't moved since the moment he knelt. His hand brushed my elbow, light and tentative. "I'm sorry," he said again, his voice low. "I know it doesn't fix everything, but I mean it." I nodded. It didn't fix anything. But it mattered. One of my aunts, Marla, approached me, arms out. She hugged me tightly, and for the first time in years it didn't feel like obligation. It felt like recognition. "I never really believed them," she whispered. "Not completely. But I didn't ask questions. I should have." Another cousin, Lena's brother, touched my shoulder. "You should have been up there, on that stage in those photos. You were always part of this family. They just made sure it didn't look like it." I swallowed hard. "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. The DJ had stopped playing music a while ago. Now he packed his equipment in awkward silence. The cake stood untouched, its white frosting glistening under the overhead lights, like a monument to everything that never really mattered. I walked out of the hall on my own. The air outside was cooler than before. Night had crept in unnoticed, and the spring breeze smelled of gardenias. My heels clicked softly against the pavement, but unlike Elaine's, mine didn't echo. I stopped just outside the main entrance, finally allowing my shoulders to drop. For the first time all evening, I was alone. And that didn't feel like abandonment anymore. It felt like space. My phone buzzed in my hand. A message from Elaine. "You humiliated us. Was it worth it?" I stared at the screen, not blinking, not breathing. And then I whispered, so quietly the wind had to lean in to hear, "Yes." The morning air carried the faintest trace of jasmine, the kind that reminded me of my grandmother's garden in Savannah. It was the only scent from my childhood that didn't come with a memory I had to flinch away from. I sat on the porch of my new rental, wrapped in an old cardigan, legs tucked beneath me. A coffee mug steamed in my hand. One I'd picked up at a flea market near Boone that read, "Strong women raise themselves." It felt like the kind of cliche I would have rolled my eyes at once. Not anymore. My phone lay silent on the table beside me. The screen still lit up now and then from leftover notifications, a few former students, a message from my old landlord about mail, but the one I hadn't touched remained pinned at the top. My mother's final message. "We did what we thought was best. I'm sorry you misunderstood. It wasn't an apology. Not really. It was a recasting of history, a way to pretend this whole thing had been a miscommunication instead of a betrayal." I didn't reply. And for once, silence felt like power, not avoidance. Inside the cabin, half-packed boxes lined the living room floor. I had books to organize, dishes to donate, files to shred. But instead, I stood up slowly, walked inside, and pulled a worn cardboard box from the hallway closet. Photos, letters, report cards with gold stars and sticky notes from students. Pieces of me they had tried to erase, buried somewhere in the middle of who they needed me to be. I packed them carefully. No more hiding. Declan showed up around 10, knocking on the doorframe like he wasn't sure if he was still welcome. He held coffee in one hand, a pastry bag in the other. "I brought caffeine," he said, "and sugar, for bribery." I gave him a tired smile. "Bribes are accepted before 11 a.m. He stepped inside slowly, looking around. "Place suits you," he said. "Feels like you." I nodded. "I'm moving again. Got an offer in Asheville, a full-time position." His eyebrows rose. "Wow, that's incredible. Congrats." He started lifting one of the heavier boxes without asking, which made me smirk. "You don't have to help," I said. "I know," he answered. Then, quieter. "I meant what I said at the wedding. I'll always mean it." I met his eyes, then looked away. "You don't owe me anything, Declan, but I hope you live a life that doesn't require kneeling to prove you're a good man." He didn't flinch. He just nodded, then carried the box out to the car in silence. That afternoon, I walked through the empty halls of the university building for the last time. The end-of-semester energy had drained out of the walls, and only the hum of vending machines remained. My final lecture had ended with a quiet applause. Nothing flashy, just a few claps and a lot of glances that said, "We'll miss you." As I gathered my things, one student lingered near the door. "I just wanted to say, thank you," she said, shifting her weight. "You helped me stand up to my dad. First time I didn't just sit there and take it." My throat caught. "You already know more than I did at your age," I said. "You'll be okay." She nodded, then left. I walked the hallway alone, my shoes soft against the linoleum, keys jangling gently in my hand. I passed by the faculty bulletin board where they still had my office hours pinned. I took it down. On the way home, I stopped by a local thrift store, dropping off a box of dishes I didn't want to carry into my new life. Then I returned to the cabin and loaded the last 2 boxes into the back seat. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting long shadows across the gravel driveway. The air buzzed with cicadas. I stood by my car, letting the stillness settle around me. I turned one last time to look at the house I'd grown up in, only now it existed entirely in memory, no longer tethered to place or people. I didn't feel grief, not anymore, just distance and peace. My phone buzzed again, another message from my mother. "I hope you're happy now. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. That's what you wanted, right?" This time, I didn't whisper. I said it out loud, to the trees, to the gravel, to myself. No, I wanted the truth. Then I slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and drove forward. Not to outrun anything, but to step into what I'd chosen. Because I wasn't the one who had disappeared from the family. They had erased me. But I wrote myself back in, on my own terms. If your family erases your name, say it louder. If they deny you a seat, build your own table. Some wounds may never fully close, but they stop bleeding when we stop letting others reopen them. Lorraine's story isn't just about inheritance or betrayal. It's about the power of reclaiming your voice, even when those closest to you try to silence it. Have you ever been made to feel invisible by your own family? What would you say if you finally had the mic? If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe for more true-to-life narratives about healing, justice, and standing up when no one else will. Your voice and your story matter here.